It's been a while, hasn't it? For those of you unfamiliar with it, long ago I started a mini-series called the Power System series, where I looked at different power systems in shonen and discussed the good and the bad of them, as well as roughly explaining them. It was fun, until I just kinda stopped doing it as the pressures of balancing a YouTube career as an adult started shifting me towards abandoning concepts and ideas the moment I stopped feeling passionate about them, only for me to realize that I still want to execute those ideas, but as the time distance between uploads grew, I grew too awkward to continue. What's that? No one's here to hear that? Nice! Anyway, let's talk about Chakra! If you've ever heard me open my crooked-ass mouth, you might know that I have a shaky relationship with Naruto, as it was my first ever series I actively understood as anime, and also a series that heavily disappointed me in its final arc and beyond. But all of that aside, Naruto is a series that's still special to me and many people, and one aspect of it that's generally quite beloved is its power system, Chakra. So I thought, let's talk about why that is, the good, the bad, and just the stuff about the power system, because I do have one or two things to say about it. For starters, let's recap what Chakra even is, so we're all on the same level. Chakra is, as many power systems devised after Dragon Ball Z became so popular, a form of life energy, natively found in almost every living being on Earth. This energy is conceptually made up of two halves, spiritual energy and physical energy, which are inherently interlinked. While most beings aren't consciously aware of this energy, humans can, with the right training, develop and harness it. Every being has a finite amount of chakra it can use, replenish, and grow. Humans that choose to do so are often referred to as shinobi or ninja. Chakra can be manipulated into many different forms and things, with it being usable as a means of combat and competition at higher levels of expertise. Techniques developed and used by shinobi are called jutsu, and any shinobi's main reserve of power is defined by the arsenal of jutsu they have learned and mastered. These techniques usually work by focusing the inner chakra via the use of hand signs or other physical actions, and then releasing it through specific areas on the body. Which jutsu any shinobi can learn, master, or even alter to their liking depends on the individual's experience, talent, and a property called natural affinity or nature transformation. While chakra exists in a pure form, certain jutsu are based on manipulating chakra into an elemental property, of which there are 5: fire, wind, lightning, earth, and water. Every person has a natural affinity to one of these elements, meaning that they can learn techniques of that type with much more ease. Occasionally, certain bloodlines or schools of teachings will be able to combine base elements into all new elements. These are often inherited powers called Kekkei Genkai. Additionally, the majority of jutsu are separated into 3 distinct schools or categories. Genjutsu are illusionary techniques, where the user's spiritual energy is used to manipulate the spiritual energy of others, creating illusions and other incorporeal effects. Taijutsu are physical techniques, where the user's physical energy is used to manipulate and engage with the physical world. In easy terms, throwing hands. And then there's ninjutsu, the biggest and also weirdest category, which uses the full range of chakra to create real, physically palpable and malleable attacks and properties out of the energy of chakra. Or, in simplest terms, taijutsu is hitting someone in the face, genjutsu is making someone believe they were hit in the face, and ninjutsu is throwing a fireball at them. Additionally, there is a nebulous 4th category, dojutsu, which includes special techniques activated by the user's eyes. These are obviously inherited powers, with certain families and clans being defined by their ability to awaken these powers. There is much more we can talk about here. I haven't even mentioned stuff like Sage Jutsu and Nature Jutsu and whatever the fuck the Uchiha have going on, but suffice to say that this system has a lot of moving parts to it, and we will talk about that. But this is the general gist of it, and we'll add on to this as we discuss. And now, let's talk about Chakra's pros and cons, starting of course with the cool stuff. Right off the bat, talking about this more in-depth thing, during my explanation you might have noticed how intricate Chakra actually is, and I genuinely believe that it is to its benefit. It hits that sweet spot where there is loads of stuff to discover about it if you want to dive into it, without running the risk of turning fights into exam questions, like for example Hunter x Hunter's Nen sometimes does. There is plenty of meat to this system that nonetheless doesn't weigh it down, which is nice. This expansiveness also helps in keeping Chakra interesting and fresh, as almost every canonical fight in the series uses the system in a new and interesting way, be it in the small scale with certain combination techniques like the Shadow Clone Transformation Shuriken, or bigger alterations like a deep dive into the 8 gates, the actual valves that control the flow and emission of Chakra from the body. You can tell that author Masashi Kishimoto put a lot of thought into it, and I think it pays off. We will talk later again about how he exactly goes about presenting this depth, but for now, suffice to say that I think the depth Chakra does have on paper is a super strong part of it. Speaking of paying off, one other pro of Chakra is the hand signs. No, seriously, these shits are insanely vital. I even have a theory that the existence of hand signs is like half the reason Naruto got popular as it did, the other half being that it's a pretty good show, but I digress. One huge hurdle any manga, or really any media property, has to eventually consider is how to become mass marketable. How do you ensure that your product reaches as many people as possible and gets recognized and shared instantly? Nowadays, companies use meme marketing, and Naruto used hand signs. Think about it. Easy to learn, hard to master routines that are rewarding to show off to your friends. Everyone was trying to do them back in the day. I personally mastered Chidori and Fireball, and playgrounds were full of us just trying to get them right. This made Naruto insanely marketable and easy to share, as everyone knew at least some kid was trying to do it. And while meme marketing is fucking awful, the hand signs are actually cool. They work for the fiction of Naruto, with Chakra being about control and intent, and they're fun to watch and imitate. It's just rewarding and satisfying to do them. Additionally, and equally importantly, they gave Naruto fights an insanely strong visual identity. An issue most martial arts-based power systems can run into is that they, well, can just end up looking like Dragon Ball, which isn't itself a bad thing, but can hold that series back in its pursuit to forge its own style. With Chakra, anyone who watches even just 2 seconds of a fight involving it will immediately know it's from Naruto due to the strong visual identity created by the hand signs. Through this, Naruto, and Chakra in general, becomes so insanely recognizable that it takes a real foothold in our cultural psyche. Another big plus is of course the much praised specificity of jutsus early on. Most techniques weren't big, wide-spanning attacks, but incredibly small-scale maneuvers meant to provide a very specific advantage to the user. This meant that fights were less constant bombast and more intimate back and forths, which made the eventual climactic, actually bombastic moments that much more impactful. And finally, a really cool thing about Chakra is how it integrates into the setting and spirit of Naruto. Chakra is, of course, based on the Hindu concept of the same name, spiritual energy that paves the way to enlightenment. So by its very nature, Chakra is tied to the idea of spiritualism and, by extension, the question of humanity's path in general. This is complemented pretty nicely in the series by some of the aspects of the system itself, like for example its first actual use in the canon by Hagoromo Otsutsuki, sage of the Six Paths and son of the being that brought Chakra into the world in the first place. Hagoromo shared Chakra with humanity under the creed he devised, Ninshu, a meditative philosophy that encouraged the harnessing of Chakra to better understand oneself and one's fellow man, a way to connect people. But humans being humans, they distorted Ninshu as they weaponized Chakra instead, and developed ninjutsu, the techniques by which Chakra is used to harm and to sever. I have loads of thoughts on the final stretch of Naruto, but this tidbit of Chakra's origin will always stand out to me as a superb thematic link between the power system and the core messages of Naruto as a series, since it establishes Chakra as a deeply spiritual concept and the existence of the power system itself as a bit of a fundamental issue that is almost there to be solved. And even beyond that, Chakra is constantly used to create a feeling of culture and history. Fundamentally, any person could learn any jutsu outside of inherited powers, of course. But as villages, families, and regions choose to teach and foster different types and schools of jutsu, they themselves form an identity, an image of what they value and what they reject, which ends up enforcing the world building of Naruto quite significantly. The Earth people and the Wind people and whatnot use different jutsu, and by that they define themselves as different. I think I've said this before, but to me, a power system truly shines when it goes beyond just making fun combat and instead becomes an integral part of how the world is constructed and realized. And Chakra does exactly that. And now, as always, we gotta talk about some negatives. Luckily, there is only one that really bothers me, although it is a bit of a big one, unfortunately. So far, we have talked about Chakra on paper, the way it was designed in an outline, where it is incredibly strong as an idea and concept. However, as we know, in writing, few things matter as much as the execution of any concept. For a power system, the execution is mostly how is it shown, but it is also how is the system communicated to the audience. And this is where Naruto stumbles a bit. You see, Chakra has all these big, vast moving parts and pieces, but it doesn't quite know how to present them properly. Let's take Nature Affinity for example. It is introduced in the Akatsuki Suppression arc, hundreds of chapters and episodes into the series. And while it is mentioned to be an advanced application, something feels off. And I think that is because we've seen people use elemental jutsu since literally episode 3. We have gone almost half of the story seeing elemental chakra natures be used, but only now are we given an acknowledgement of its existence and an explanation, which feels unsatisfying, kinda weird. It feels like it should have come up earlier. It's not even really mentioned before Naruto gets a lecture by Kakashi on it, and it just feels like Kishimoto made this up on the spot. Note, I don't think he did make it up on the spot, it just makes too much sense for that. But the way it just appears as a concept that has always supposedly existed, it was just never mentioned, and that's just not very elegant in my opinion. And, as with most things in Naruto, this problem gets worse as the final arcs and beyond play out. Each time Kishimoto brings in a new aspect of chakra, it has like a 50-50 chance of not feeling like he's revealing information, but rather inventing information. And while, again, I don't think he was inventing it as he went along, the odd ways in which he revealed the info made it feel that way, which is awkward. The best example of this has to be the way yin and yang chakra are introduced. They are, simply put, the fundamental way in which spiritual and physical energy, the base blocks of chakra, are transmuted into jutsu, as they govern mind and flesh respectively. This is huge, basically the arithmetics of chakra itself and its most basic and fundamental property. And they are introduced around chapter 500. My man, what? This base foundation of the system that permeates a vast majority of powers present that has never even been alluded to before being introduced this late is just... wow. Like, yeah, throwing something this important in this late with no prior mention is just very hard to swallow. I remember reading this as it came out and just being confused as fuck because how the hell are you gonna expect me to believe this late into the series? Obviously, the author then obviously tries to retroactively make us believe that certain things we've seen before were actually yin and yang release, but at that point the damage is done. It's just a clumsy way to do it that strains the believability of the system because honestly, there is no reason this stuff wouldn't have come up earlier. So the biggest weakness with Chakra ends up being Kishimoto's inconsistency in how he explains its various parts and aspects, with some of those explanations coming way too late and being just overall clumsy. And that's it. That's really all that's wrong with Chakra. I could nitpick further into very small specific things that have bothered me over the series, like for example how people see Naruto use the Nine Tails and then never ask him about it, but you know, like whatever, those are relatively small, I don't care too much. Genuinely, the biggest issue I have with Chakra is the way Kishimoto went about showing and explaining it around the time Shippuden rolled around. But again, this is very much a smaller issue, and one that is localized mostly towards the end of the series. And before you ask, no, I will not mention Boruto's addition to the system. I do not care, Boruto doesn't exist to me, and honestly, it shouldn't to you either. All in all, Chakra is a crazy cool system that paved the way for other series and systems to come and iterate on it. It's recognizable, iconic, expansive, and just fun to observe and learn about, while also being well integrated into the series setting. And while some clumsy presentation does end up holding it back a bit, it still is one of my favorite power systems in Battle Shonen and a hallmark of shonen manga in general. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that jazz. You've heard it a billion times from other YouTubers, I don't have to tell you. If you want to support me, I'll absolutely love you. If you want to be a part of this lovely community that you see on screen now, you can support me on Patreon as well. You can pay whatever you want, you get access to our new Discord server, you can choose and vote for which video I want to do next, all that good stuff. And I also stream on Twitch. Link in the description, come say hi, we can chat a bit. Take care, be safe, bye bye.